Hi, I'm Kuttenberger Martin. I have a master degree in history and I'm currently a surveyor of historical buildings. In this series, I will talk to you about some little pebbles from the history of Kuttenberg and maybe some surroundings. And we have like month until the game release, so still in this videos there will not be a much gameplay footage because the game is still not out, but I will try to somehow make it interesting, even though we are still not sure what exactly we will see there. Okay, so let's go to this monastery of Sedlec. It's located next to Kutná Hora today, but it is a little bit older than the town itself. So let's start with the foundation itself. It was founded in year 1142 by the guy whose name was Miroslav of Cimburg. The question is where this Cimburg of his was. For a long time it was thought that it was next to Kutná Hora, today's on a river bank up on the hill, but the archaeological research in 20th century showed there was no medieval thing in there, so it's still open question where this Cimburg actually was. But this was then the powerful house in Moravia, so the name is quite known, but we don't know anything about their positions here in Kutná Hora. But how this foundation worked? Well, in the beginning you needed monks, so here came the 12 monks from the mother monastery, which was Waldsassen, and in Cistercian order you had this like pyramid structure of the monasteries. So on the top was the original one in Citeaux, then and then the way to Sedlec was Morimond, Kamp, Volkenrode, Waldsassen, and then it was Sedlec. These monasteries were usually founded in the valleys or like in the lowlands. It's quite a difference between Cistercian monasteries and the Benedictine ones, because Benedictines usually built the monasteries up on the hills. So here this Cistercian monastery is also quite low. It's all the hills are here around, and this building is next to a river. The river is like there, about 50 meters from where I'm standing. What was the role of this Miroslav of Cimburg? The thing is that at the beginning, when you found this monastery, you need some like a seed money, let's say it like that. So what was given by this Miroslav to the Sedlec monastery is he gave them the villages, couple of villages here around, so they had like this basic stuff from the beginning, like food, wood, and the stuff simply you need to survive and build whatever you needed. The goal of the monastery was to create a self-sufficient ecosystem, meaning that this Cistercians were able to build or create kind of everything by themselves. So there were also a lot of artisans. They had the know-how, not just like how to build furniture, but also smiths, architects, or like stonemasters and other professions needed to build structures. So when they settled here, they were then able in this region to like build everything they needed. These monasteries were supported by this nobleman and king himself, because they had also this colonization function, meaning they were supposed to build their monasteries in the places where no one lived, which is not this case, because there is a village Malín about 1 kilometer from here, which was existing at the time, so it quite didn't fit to this, but yeah. And of course this village was one that was given to monastery to support its growth. Okay, so you can imagine that we have this monastery here and this village Malín right next to it, but then there is nothing more around here. So what happened next? Quite interesting stuff was happening after Otakar II of Bohemia lost a battle, died, and the invaders sacked this monastery in year 1278 or a little bit after, and it was quite such a big strike for this monastery that they almost thought that they will abandon it because it was quite destroyed. But two things happened after that. One was the discovery of silver on the hills nearby, and the second was the new abbot, young and quite energetic guy named Heidenreich. Well, Heidenreich was one of the most important figures of that time. He was very politically active, and he had quite important role in election of John of Luxembourg to the Czech throne. So the guy who's grandfather of Wenceslaus and Sigismund, the competing kings we will see in the game. So let's talk about the silver a little bit. From the beginning it was of course really big and probably very cheered thing in the monastery, but the silver deposits here were so big that over the time the monastery lost completely control over that. So maybe in the year 1403 they already thought like it would be better if they never found it. But in the turn of 13th and 14th century it was probably not thought like that, because the town was thriving, and even though the monastery had nothing from the mining itself, they were a huge provider of services, because as I told, they had this know-how how to build good houses, how to do some artisan work, and also they had these villages around, and that means they were main provider of food and wood. So even though they were not directly mining the silver and had no direct money from that, they sell like these services and all of the stuff you needed to mine. So they had a lot of money from that, and that also led to the building of the cathedral you see behind me, because that's exactly from this time, from this turn of 13th and 14th century. But unfortunately over time this this influence and or like this services they provided, it weakened, because of course more and more people came, and then they were able to provide these services themselves. And also the villages, because of the financial situation, the villages had monastery, which monastery had, they had to sell them over time out, or they even keep them, but they sell the profits for the quick money. So meaning you like got a lot of cash from someone, but you told them, okay, now for next 20-30 years you will have all the income from this and that village. So in 1403 they already sold like a lot of these villages this way. So like the profits from the villages were sold to someone else this way. So that's why I'm saying, even though on a paper they owned a lot of stuff around here, they were in kind of financial struggle. But let's get back to Abbot Heidenreich for a moment, and to the incident which happened in year 1309, because the Sedlec monastery was the main actor, a little bit more statist in this incident. And I'm talking about it because it involved ancestors of the people you will see in the game. So first of them was Henry of Lipa, or Lipa. So this guy was the great grandfather of Hanush of Lipa, that the guy we saw in the first game, and we will quite surely saw in the second one too. And this guy was at the time a big animal in the politics, and he had his horse in this struggle for the Czech crown, because in this time there was quite an interregnum in the Czech lands, meaning we were between kings. In 1306 was murdered the Wenceslas III, so last member of the Přemyslit dynasty, and then there was like this competition for the Czech crown and which dynasty will continue on the throne. So this Henry of Lipa had his horse in this run, and the people in Kutná Hora, there was also kind of struggle, but then it was kind of won by Rudhard family, and they had another horse in this run. So Rudhards were important family at the time, and even in the time of the game we will definitely meet them there, and I will talk about them in a moment more. But the incident was about that the Rudhards from the town came here to Sedlec monastery when the Henry of Lipa was here, and they arrested him and captured him. So then he was in prison for a while, and then they released him because they kind of didn't know what to do with it. But the fun thing is that Henry of Lipa was supporting Albrecht of Habsburg, and Rudhards were supporting Henry of Carinthia. And in the end, most funny thing is that the Abbot Heidenreich, the guy who was the boss in the church, in the monastery, which played no role in this arrest, was the guy who was ruling for a third horse in this race, and it was John of Luxembourg, who in the end, at year 1310, really got the crown and was elected as Czech king. So all this struggle between Henry of Lipa and Rudhards was kind of for nothing, because in the end the crown got this third guy. When we are talking about Rudhards, also interesting connection with Sedlec monastery is that their main domain at the time, in the time of the game, is Malešov, and the Malešov was before Rudhards owned by Sedlec monastery, and they sold it to them in 1365. You will see Malyshev in the game. We already saw some screenshots of it and concept arts, and we will probably see also some siege of this fort there. So, as I told, Rudharz will play an important role in the game, so remember that name, because you will hear it a lot in the month or so. Okay, so that's about history now, and maybe I show you some little details around you may miss easily. Of course, one of the most important features of this area of Sedlec Monastery is the cathedral itself of Assumption of Virgin Mary and John the Baptist. Most of you know of course the ossuary of Sedlec with all the bones and stuff made out of them. But you have me as a guide, so I will tell you what no other guide tells you. So this is a little thing. If I turn around here behind this fence, it's a little bit hidden. There is a window from Romanesque times, meaning it's probably one of the oldest single thing here in this area. There was probably some building already in the 13th century, and there are also some vaults, not still standing, but like these prints on the walls of some old vaults. So there was some chapel, or hard to tell, something. And yeah, it would be nice to see some recreation of this building in the game, because today it's just 1.5 wall what's remaining. But yeah, there was definitely something, and this little window is the oldest thing you can find around here. Is it interesting or not? Let me know in comments. Now we are standing almost directly between cathedral and ossuary in Sedlec. So we are in the middle of the street between those two nice buildings, and I will tell you another little piece of history about this ugly wall with even uglier gate that nobody will tell you probably. And that's the thing, that this is the remaining wall of the Church of Saint James and Philip. In year 1403, on this place was standing a church, and before the cathedral was built, that was the main church of this monastery. So even after the cathedral was built, it was like for the common people, this church, because the cathedral was for monks. And yeah, right behind this wall was the main altar, because this wall is facing east, and today it's just, yeah, this wall with ugly gate. So nothing more here, but I hope we will see this church in a game too, so let's hope we will. And right behind me you can see the ossuary of Sedlec, the building we will definitely see in the game, because we already saw it on some like media material, or some of you maybe use it as wallpaper, because it's a nice view on the town from this direction of Sedlec Monastery. And before I say goodbye, because this is for a whole episode, maybe someday in the future, but I would like to tell you some little trivia about this graveyard here around. It's much smaller than it was in 1403, and I think they will even not recreate it in its fullest in the game, because it was really huge. and the graveyard was huge for one reason, because someone, supposedly this Abbot Heidenreich, visited the Holy Land, and he brought back some sack or box with dirt from the Holy Land, and when he came back he just threw it away here, so threw it around, which meant that instantly this land around became like a Holy Land, right? So it was like magic, and everyone wanted to be buried here, because supposedly your body disappeared in 24 hours and you were in a heaven after that. So it became so popular that this graveyard was so huge. It supposedly went almost all the way to the Malin, so 1 kilometer in a distance. At least that's what people from archaeology department told me, that they are finding bones all over the place here. Every time someone is wants to build a garage on their garden or whatever. So it's quite interesting stuff. It will be probably not so big in the game, because it would be like a quarter of map, just graveyard. It would be probably pretty boring. But yeah, that's a fun story. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please hit subscribe button and leave a comment if you like this. And yeah, I will hopefully see you in next episode very soon, because I'm planning to do like a lot of this historical context videos. It will not be too much about the game, but I will try to somehow connect it with year 1403 and what was happening around here at the time. Okay, so see you next time. Bye.